This is Steve Zeltzer with KPFA WorkWeek Radio, and we've been covering the struggle of the longshoremen for many, many years on KPFA WorkWeek, but also they're engaged in a major struggle now to defend their jobs and fight gentrification in Oakland, where a lot of longshoremen live in West Oakland. And joining us today on WorkWeek Radio is Clarence Thomas. Clarence is a past Secretary-Treasurer of ILWU Local 10, and also he's with the May Day Organizing Committee of Local 10. And also joining us is Lawrence Thibeaux, who is a past president of ILWU Local 10. He's also president of the San Francisco Pensioners and vice president of ILWU Coast Pensioners. Welcome to WorkWeek Radio.
Thank you.
Thanks. So we're having a May Day, and the ILWU has led the way, really, as a union in the United States in fighting for May Day and bringing May Day back. Right. And that is really important because working people here in this country are united fighting the same issues as workers in every other country: privatization, deregulation, union busting. So, Thibeaux, why don't you talk about the history of the ILWU, why it's relevant, and May Day and the struggle of May Day today?
Well, I go back to what Paul Robeson said a long time ago in 1946, where he said that the people with money had taken over the apparatus of the government, and that labor was in trouble, and that we needed to overturn that. But today it hasn't happened. What's happening now is that labor is being attacked on all fronts in terms of us trying to organize, in terms of us trying to educate, in terms of us trying to even win jurisdictional disputes, where constantly the government is putting their thumbs down on the ILWU, when we have historically been doing certain types of work on the waterfront. So it just shows that we have a lot of work to do. And one of the problems we're having is the younger people that get in our union do not have the information that they need to fight. Right now, the employer says jump, they jump, even though there are rules that say you don't have to jump.
And people died fighting for these rules.
Right. And, he said, the boss says, don't take your break, and I'll let you off early. And they go for the okey doke, all right? We died for those rules. Don't take a lunch, and you can get off early. We died for lunch. So we look at this and we see that our conditions are slowly being undermined from lack of education of our younger members who think the boss is right. He has all the power and we have none. But I remember when I was coming up, Harry says, we control the means of production. The employers can't make one damn penny unless we work. And when you cut off his money, that's the only time he wants to talk to you. As long as the money is flowing, he'll talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and nothing will get done. But as soon as you cut that money off, what do you need? What do you want? And the other thing, too, is when the members decide to work together as a group, he has to give it up.
And the ILWU was under attack in the 50s. They tried to remove Harry Bridges, expel him. Probably Trump would have put him in Guantanamo if he was around at that time. And one of the reasons was the ILWU has a democratic tradition. It's a militant union compared to most, and the members have more power than they do in many other locals. They elect their officers in San Francisco Local 10. They have an election every year for members, officers, and they can only be in for 2 years. That changes the way a union is. And that's
no clicks in the union.
You have to go back to work with the people that you have elected you, and if you've betrayed them, you got a problem working as a longshoreman.
Be on you all day long.
That's right.
About how you misbehave in office.
So also joining us is Clarence Thomas. And Clarence, the fact that May Day is an important a day for workers around the world and for the ILWU, and today in California, they're thousands and thousands of workers without contracts, negotiating contracts at UC and others, and yet they're not really united as they should be.
Okay, well, first thing is that in 2008, during the course of our contract negotiations, the ILWU Longshore Division took an action to shut down all 29 ports for 8 hours, not for wages and working conditions and benefits, but to protest the wars and occupation in Iraq and Afghanistan. That was a historic moment. And for the last 5 years, Local 10 has taken its union meeting on May Day, which translates into no work for 8 hours. And so this is the 5th year that we're doing it. We believe that it's important for working people to understand that we got the 8-hour workday in this country, weekends, benefits emanating from the struggle for the 8-hour workday. And that was called in the late 1880s, where the union movement called for a general strike. And what led to that was the Haymarket incident in Chicago, where someone threw a bomb, and we don't know who it was, and the police killed a bunch of folks, and there were people put up on trial and hung. And all over the world, people, workers, memorialized that day. And a lot of folks say, oh, May Day, that's some kind of foreign communist holiday. No. I mean, socialist countries do have a national holiday on May Day, and we don't here in this country, but it started right here in the United States of America. And on this May Day, we're going to be demanding that the Port of Oakland not sell the land to the Oakland A's to have a baseball park and build $1 million skybox condos on the waterfront where we make our living. That's the fifth busiest port in the United States of America, the Port of Oakland is. And the longshore workers are responsible for making the port safe, efficient, and productive. And we see any incursion on the part of the Oakland A's to have that space for a baseball park. The presumption is that you can have an amusement park on an industrial site where people make living wages, and it's not only for longshore workers and people in the Bay Area, but there's some 73,000 jobs that are generated. It's said that for every 1,000 containers, 8 jobs are generated, and these are jobs that are not seasonal. These are jobs that pay living wages. These are jobs that have benefits. So when you look at the proposal, it's ridiculous, but it is a sign that the Billionaire professional sports team have the politicians in their pockets, because now what the elected officials who are supporting the ballpark proposal, what they're trying to do is to fast track the granting of permits so they can rush this thing through. So this is the reason why we're mobilizing at 1 Market Street. That's at the foot of Market and the Embarcadero in front of Howard Terminal for May Day at 11 a.m. And Sarah Nelson, who heads up the air traffic control, the flight attendants, she's going to be one of the
CWA vice president of the flight attendants.
She's going to be speaking along with others. And the OEA has
That's the Oakland Education Association.
They're going to be supporting us as well and mobilizing their workers to come out.
And this issue of gentrification that workers face, workers can't afford to live in the Bay Area, and now they're being driven out. And it seems like for working people, there's no future with capitalist development, corporate development. And this gentrification is not only going to have condos, but also jobs, good union-paying jobs are going to be removed.
One of the ways you can tell what's going on, they decommissioned 9th Avenue on the Embarcadero in Oakland. And now you have condos going up, and the rent is $2,000 to $4,000 a month. Now, we know that's not affordable for a normal West Oakland resident, but that's what's going to happen if they go through with this deal at Howard Terminals. In addition to that, that's our turning basin. That's where all the ships come and turn around. And, you know, if the ballpark is there, you'll have all the lights, and you'll have firecrackers going off, and it's going to be a navigational hazard for those vessels. Now, the turning basin is a infrastructural must for the Port of Oakland to survive. And we can't go any further upstream because we have the Alameda Tube there. So that's the only place we can turn those vessels around and go back to the ports that we have there. And also, there is an impact on West Oakland even today. We had a lot of respiratory problems where trucks were coming and parking all around the neighborhood. We finally got the Port of Oakland to transfer all those trucks and chassis and containers at Howard Terminal off the street. And the residents were complaining every morning they get up, this black soot is all over
They
their
suffer.
cars.
They suffer living.
Yes. And the old and the young were suffering with respiratory problems. We got rid of it by having them over at Howard Terminal. Now they want to put them back on the street. In addition to that, where are all these cars going to park? There's no parking there. I mean, the whole thing is
It
nonsense.
sounds like chaos and insanity, but but what's driving it? What's driving it?
Well, let me just.
Libby Schaaf is driving it. She promised that she's going to have affordable housing, and she convinced some of those West Oakland residents that it's going to happen. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's not going to happen.
And not only is it a lie, but if this should occur, these multi-million-dollar condos, the people who will be living there will be a constituency who will go to the city and say, hey, there's too much noise. The lights from the ships are bothering us. The tugboats are making noise. Oh, there's too much pollution. And they will use that. They'll say, this is a nuisance, and use environmental issues to run other employers away from the port. And that could mean that we could end up like San Francisco. If we look at the Embarcadero today, at one point, that's where all the ship traffic was.
And that's a great port.
Yes.
With deep water port, that used to be one of the biggest in the country.
Well, if employers start to leave, they'll be, oh, well, we can build more condos. And the next thing you know, the Port of Oakland will be the port of last resort.
And
I just want to say, in the year 2000, we sent a letter to the San Francisco Planning Commission, and we demanded that there be a industrial zone, buffer zone, that buildings and developers couldn't cross. And one of the reasons is because once they encroach into that buffer zone, then the port workers would be attacked by the people who own those homes there. We had the same problem. Now that was 2000, and we got them to have a buffer zone at Pier 80, 90, 94, 96, where there's a buffer zone that they can't be crossed. In Richmond, the developers wanted to build condos next to Matson terminals, and that land there is so polluted, you can't even expose it to the environment. You can't grow anything there. All right, they used that for many years during the war. There's all kind of stuff in the ground. It's only good for paving. Then again, in Seattle in 2007, they wanted to build a baseball stadium on the dock. The city council turned around and created an industrial zone.
so
The boundaries cannot be crossed.
you're fighting for that now in Oakland.
Yes, we want a buffer zone that can't be crossed.
And it seems, is there an issue of racism in this whole issue? Because it seems Hunters Point, Bayview, they want to kick them out. The developers, condos, they're ethnic cleansing. I mean, it's just there are too many black and brown people in Oakland, and maybe if you get these condos in the ballpark, you can change the complexion of Oakland. Clarence?
Oh, there's no question about that. You know, I have to reflect on the early 60s when the urban renewal projects were going on in San Francisco and in Oakland. And in the community, we said that that was Negro removal. And so that was a form of gentrification. They just weren't calling it that then in the community. But I was at a community meeting just this past Saturday in West Oakland, where a number of longtime West Oakland residents we're being told about all of these wonderful things that will happen with the ballpark.
We're here to help you.
And listen, but the good thing is many of them know about longshoremen because they have longshoremen in their family or they went to school with longshore workers, and they understand the history of what the ILWU has represented in West Oakland. And so we believe that this is far from a done deal. But the powers that be want the community to think that this is going to happen. It didn't happen at Laney, and we can stop it at Howard Terminal as well.
And Thibeaux, why? I mean, since the port is very productive and very profitable as a large port, and it has a large number of workers, unionized workers, why would they threaten something that is generating jobs and income for the city of Oakland?
Developers like this fantasy of, they build this cloud of majesty, where everything is magic. They're going to put these wonderful homes around, and they paint a very beautiful picture. But in
Dreams.
in reality, it's all a bunch of crap. All right? It's not going to happen. And the real thing is gentrification of that neighborhood. Now, for years and years and years, when they had the freeway there that separated that area on one side or the other, you couldn't get 1 penny of bank loans there. It were all black. It was a black segregated neighborhood, period. You couldn't fix your place up. All the houses leaning this way or that way.
People tried to
Tried to get. Now you go there and you see other ethnic groups fixing the houses up. The money's flowing from the bank, all right? But they're not black. They're not black. So you can see that the trend is there, and Libby Schaaf is part of that problem. She wants to gentrify the neighborhood in West Oakland.
And there's a great deal of arrogance on the part of the billionaire class, of the ruling class. And this is what I mean. When you look at the artist's rendering of this baseball park, they've got the cranes as part of the ambiance of the port experience. Listen, the Port of Oakland has become a very iconic representation for the city of Oakland. There's no doubt about that. But there's a reason for that. But this is not a plaything or a toy, because we understand that gentrification is a real issue, and we also understand that this port can be jeopardized.
it could be destroyed.
It can be destroyed, and it's like a domino effect. And so we're very concerned about it. And this is part of a public resource. The people of the state of California control these tidelands, okay? And the billionaire class wants to use it for their own playground. And on this question about transportation that Brother Thibeaux just brought up, their answer is that they're going to have a gondola that will ride over the freeway that takes 6,000 people at a time to the stadium. I mean,
You can't even move your car from one city to another city, and they're going to have a gondola to go to the game. Total gridlock.
Gondola breaks down.
And the first company that's in jeopardy is the what is that?
Is that Snitzer?
Snitzer Steel.
Snitzer Steel. Yeah.
I mean, because they work there's all kind of particles in the air, and it's going to be right next to the ballpark, and they're going to say, hell no, that company has to go.
And we've already got 2 stadiums in East Oakland that could be refurbished, that could be developed. The old there's already the facilities. There's the BART station going to those.
Well, here's the thing. I hate to use a pun, but there's a double header for this particular proposal, because the A's organization wants the city of Oakland to buy the land from the county of Alameda in East Oakland, then sell them the land because they want to have a high-tech park with retail and homes at that site, and they want to level the stadium and make that an amphitheater, keep the Coliseum for concerts, and then do this number with the gentrification of the baseball stadium at Howard Terminal.
And
we're not bamboozled at all on this one.
And this John Fisher, who owns the the A's. He's a billionaire, and his family owns a Gap Corporation. And he also, the manager of the A's, actually is on the board of directors of Rocket Ship Charter Schools. They helped set up the KIPP charter school chain. They're giving billions of dollars. In fact, John Fisher is a supporter of the California Charter School Association. Gave $25,000. He supports their candidate. So it sounds like on all fronts, privatization, get rid of public schools, putting on charter schools, and then getting rid of longshore jobs. And
We got this thing called private-public partnership. And this is a way for them to take the public lands and public property away from the public with money. That's the worst thing they ever did when they decided to hook each other together, because we've been losing ever since they started that nonsense, and they need to get rid of it.
And they were successful in the Laney struggle. They were going to help Laney with their financial problems by taking over their parking lot.
Right.
And building the stadium there, and they weren't successful. And why do you think that they failed there?
I think that one of the main reasons why they failed is because of the fact that it's an educational institution, and not only that, but the powers that be had to be held accountable to the constituency of the Peralta School District. So there was a local, all politics are local. I think that had a big part of it. But what's interesting is that Mayor Schaaf, she seemed to have understood the whole thing about gentrification when it came to Laney College. But now when it comes to Howard Terminal, she doesn't see it. She doesn't see that at all. Perhaps it's desperation. We cannot overlook the influence that money has on elected officials. So they're very much beholden to those that provide the funding for their campaigns. And so if they don't, dance to their music, then they find someone else to support. But when you look at all of the homelessness in
Tents all over, and San Francisco, thousands and thousands of people.
You're talking about an infrastructure around Howard Terminal, electrical, rail, trucking, and the rail concerns industrial trains as well as Amtrak. And so you're going to do go through all of these hoops and gyrations with gondolas and all this other kind of stuff, but you can't solve the problem of homelessness in the city of Oakland. That should tell us a lot about where the elected officials' priorities are.
And I mean, it seems there is a social crisis in an emergency. I mean, there's mass transportation. BART is breaking down. People are stuck in their cars. They're building more buildings in San Francisco. They're building this new stadium, the Warrior Stadium. Who's going to go to that from Oakland? You can't get across the bridge. It's a total gridlock. I mean, it sounds like a dystopia, which it is for more and more people, with homeless, working people, even if they have full-time union jobs, can't afford to live here. They're living in their cars. They're homeless. Is this what capitalism is providing to one of the richest places in the world?
Well, just a few days ago, Jamie Dimon, Warren Buffett, and some other billionaires were saying things like, we should be paying more in taxes, and we can reform capitalism. And that is because they see what's coming. Capitalism cannot serve the needs of the working class as it once did with Lawrence and my and your generation when America was the number one economy. That's no longer the case. We now see automation is on the rise. Does that mean that workers are going to be displaced and not have a guaranteed income? These are all questions that we as the working class have to assess right now. And we have to stand up and fight back. And that's what happened at Laney. And that's what we're going to have to do with regard to Howard Terminal.
And this issue of technology, the Uber and Lyft want to automate their cars. The drivers there are thousands, tens of thousands of drivers who come from Sacramento, Los Angeles to work in the Bay Area. They're sleeping in their cars, and they want to get rid of them. They've been marginalized, so they can't survive. I mean, it sounds like for the working class, the working people of California and the Bay Area, there is no future. It's
The new worker will be the machine. We will go to museums, and you'll see a guy in construction uniform and a hard hat, and the youngster will be saying, you know, we used to do that. So, you know, I read a book in 1963. It was called The Guaranteed Annual Wage, and it talked about people who have been convinced what you work is what you eat, and how we're going to have to psychologically change people's mindset that you don't have to work if you want to eat, especially when the machine is going to be the new worker. The machine is going to have to feed us. Feed us by giving us a guaranteed annual wage, and what that means is a livable wage. You get food, you get water, you get shelter, you get clothes. Now anything past that, you want a luxury car, you got to go to work and get it. All right? But for basic survival needs, that's what you need in this country.
And yet these billionaires in Silicon Valley, Facebook and Google and Uber, that money is flowing to them. It's not flowing to the working class. How is our working people going to change? I know the ILWU was in favor of a labor party, a workers' party to actually make the changes. But it seems like the Democrats and Republicans, they are beholden to these billionaires. And what's going on here in Oakland? Oakland is was a working class city. It's becoming gentrified, but it sounds like the ILWU and maritime jobs are not really on the agenda for the politicians in Oakland. Is that the case?
That is the case. And one of the things I wanted to point out to you, Steve, is some of the people that are involved in this coalition. You might be surprised to hear some of them. I'm talking about the coalition to stop this baseball stadium. Agriculture Transportation Coalition, American Waterways Operators, California Trucking Association, Custom Brokers and Forwarders Association, Northern California, Harbor Trucker Association, of course, the ILWU Local 6, 10, 91, 34, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, the Sierra Club, Bay Area, Sierra Club, State of California. We all have mutual interest in this matter. And so I think that gets down to the crux of who is the public good going to serve? Is it going to serve the billionaire class, or is it going to serve the majority in this country? We cannot allow the privatization of that port, because if it does, it will be like a domino effect. We can fight back. And I would call your attention to this. You know, Amazon decided that they were going to pay their workers $15 an hour. But before that, they said, no, we can't do it. But they begin to see the handwriting on the wall. I understand that they're trying to unionize some Amazon factories in Germany right now. So that's the reason why the working class needs to have its own media, so that we can begin to communicate and learn what we're doing around the world. And one of the things about the ILWU, Harry Bridges believed that workers should have the opportunity to travel and meet with other workers and communicate with them. Not the leadership of the union, but the rank and file. And that's been something that's been a part. I know Brother Lawrence, as well as myself, have had the opportunity to do that.
And this idea of internationalism, I mean, the workers in other countries are facing the same thing: gentrification, deregulation, attacks on health and safety standards.
Yeah, what happened is before, we used to have stevedoring companies that were local. Then the steamship companies decided, well, we're going to get rid of those guys. We're going to operate the port ourselves. So now you have all these steamship companies, which are international in scope, going from port to port, undermining longshore jobs. So we need to be international in scope as well. And the only way we do that is by sending our members from port to port to port. And when we have our conventions, we invite them to come to talk to us and let us know what our employer are doing to them, so that we know how to handle it when it comes to us. So it's very important that we keep up this international conversation going.
And you're fighting the same fight.
We're fighting the same
companies, the same people, the same tactics.
company, everything.
They probably don't like this internationalism, because that's a threat. I mean, if you act collectively internationally,
Right.
you have the power to fight them.
That's correct.
and that's the reason why the employer is not stopping us from having May Day, is because they know that if they don't agree,
We're gonna do it anyway.
we're going to do it anyway, and their shipping schedule will be up. But that's the power of the working class. But to go back to a point that Lawrence mentioned about the younger generation of workers, thinking that the boss is all powerful and that they owe their jobs to the boss. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any, and so that's a big issue with a lot of the younger workers. They are enjoying the fruits of the labor of the men and women who came long before them, who made extreme sacrifices, and so programs like this will help educate our younger members and make them understand the need for a progressive people's controlled government.
And one of the problems that we even have our union officials say the same thing. They can't, if the employers want it, we got to give it to them. But that's not what the Taft-Hartley rules say. It says if a union official puts his finger on one rule in the contract, they can't touch him. Nothing. He has all the rights to bring up those rules and regulations on behalf of its members. But our union officials, because they haven't been educated to know what their rights are, they just give in to the employers. And it's just so frustrating that they give up their rights so easy. And all they have to do is go to the labor school. They're constantly asking people to come and get some education, and they don't do it.
Well, Sarah Nelson, who is going to be speaking at the May Day rally here in Oakland on May 1st, head of the Airline Flight Attendants Union, CWA, 60,000 airline flight attendants, actually threatened a general strike when Trump shut down the government, and said it should be not just for transportation workers, for all working people. And MLK was fighting for equality. This is new for a national union leader to talk about the idea of a general strike. Does this reflect a change going on in the labor movement, the organized labor movement, that even to mention a general strike? I mean, the last general strike was right here in Oakland.
Right.
Yeah, 1946.
1946, and there hasn't been any other general strikes since 1946. That's a long time.
I think that the pendulum has swung so far to the right that people understood during that shutdown that the only way that they were going to have any leverage was by saying, we're not going to work these airlines. Because there's a theory that once Trump heard that's what made him back down and decide that he was going to put people back to work, because he knew what that meant. And that's the power of the working class. And Harry Bridges used to say to the rank and file all the time that the only time that the employers listen to us and the only leverage we have is the ability to shut them down. Because otherwise, capital has the money. They've got the elected officials. They've got the press, and the only thing we have is our power at the point of production.
And it seems like that's coming more and more to the fore.
And that's what we will be flexing on May Day. So come out to number 1 Market Street and Embarcadero at the Port of Oakland, 11 a.m. at Howard Terminal, all out for May Day.
Okay, well, thank you, both of you, for joining us on KPFA Work Week. And obviously, this issue is a matter of survival for your union and for working people. If we can't protect the Port of Oakland, what can we protect?
That's right.